G'day, Whovians, and welcome back to the Who Universe 20 Years of New Who celebration. We have now reached Jodie Whittaker, the first official female casting for Doctor Who in terms of the character of the Doctor. Jodie Whittaker was the first among the women to be cast in that category, and it was a big. Obviously, this was a big deal for Doctor Who. The fact a female was taking over. Obviously, David Tennant fall back into Jodie because knew her from Broadchurch, so he knew Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker very well, so he was supporting them no matter what. We knew we had to give them our trust eventually. They were in charge of this whole new era of Doctor Who they were introducing us to. So let's see Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker were able to produce during Jodie's first year as the... In terms of episodes I enjoyed, well, there isn't really that many stories I enjoyed in Series 11. It's kind of the same reasons to what everybody else has when it comes to Jodie's run. Is like some stories are good. There are a couple of the stories that, but then there are other stories that just fell flat very quickly to the kind of question the writing. Like some of the writing just makes sense for Jodie in terms of her acting ability. Just some of the stories they put her in are just not very well received. Certain stories are just working with her, essentially. But anyway, let's talk about some of the stories from this series. So we have The Woman Who Fell to Earth. That was an excellent introduction to Jodie Whittaker. The way she was introduced into this series brought a lot of people in, by the way, this story. So essentially, The Woman to Earth was essentially an opportunity for them, for the Doctor to basically embrace this whole, like, I'm a female sort of protagonist, pretty much. The way that they built her up, because I think there was a lot of concerns going into the episode because they knew that, okay, sassy or something like typical British girls are. But no, they weren't really going down that path at all. They weren't really thinking about wanting to make like a typical British girl type of atmosphere. They were going a completely different direction where they were trying to make it believe that she was the Doctor, essentially. And I love the fact that how she came into the how she her very first scene as the new Doctor in the new, like, her first series, she comes crashing down into a train dealing with this electricity boss who has basically put like a bomb inside basically her and the many friends that are around them. So essentially, we also meet the new companions. We meet Tosin Cole, who plays Ryan Sinclair, Mandip Gill, who plays Yasmin Khan, and of course Bradley Walsh, a very popular face in the TV industry, especially if you love The Chase and etc. etc. He plays Graham O'Brien. Bradley Walsh, again famous for The Chase, now becoming a companion for Doctor Who, which was really cool that they had Bradley Walsh as the comedian guy in the new batch of companions, which I thought was really... And it was also great because they were trying to bring back that sort of 60s companion atmosphere that I think a lot of people missed, and I think they were trying to aim for that. Jodie's run, which I can understand why they were trying 4 people in the TARDIS instead of just 2, which I think makes sense. They wanted to have a bit of a family thing going on, But yeah, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, that the atmosphere of this story, the fact Jodie came in, met Paul to silence the enemy, but then obviously the enemy disappears. But obviously the fact that she was spending, the fact that she was trying to spend most of the story trying to remember who she was following the events of her regeneration, and the fact that she got separated from her TARDIS, so she has no TARDIS with her, so therefore she was basically having to cope without a TARDIS, essentially, and try to find a way, coordinate to basically save everyone from the danger, one, without her sonic screwdriver, because she lost the screwdriver whilst falling into Earth, but also at the same time having to cope without a TARDIS, which was a deal at first. It's like, how is the Doctor going to cope without a TARDIS? That was a big storyline going in. The first thing we saw from this story is we definitely saw the new sonic screwdriver. The Doctor made a sonic screwdriver with spoons and stuff, and I love the fact that she basically built her very own sonic screwdriver. And really, really cool that she basically made herself a sonic screwdriver to help her identify DNA stuff and be able to figure out that there were DNA inside every human. So he decided to order essentially tried to navigate all the bombs from them, so that way they could be able to fire all the bombs right back at Tim Shaw. Which, yes, she referred him as Tim Shaw because that's what he said. He said Tim Shaw. So people thought, okay, it's Tim Shaw. That's the name of the end. But what was also really, really unfortunate was the salad guy. The fact that they had a guy who said, eat my salad, and he ends up dying to him, he was only having a kebab and having salad like I was at the time. And I felt very gutted for him because he must have spent like quite a bit to get that kebab. And then all of a sudden he ends up getting fried by this enemy. As the episode progressed and as the Doctor got her new sonic screwdriver, began sort of her plan to defeat this Tim Shaw, who was obviously the guy that the Tim Shaw character, basically detonated all the DNA bombs to Tim Shaw. So Tim Shaw would end up feeling the effects of the bombs, which eventually led to Tim Shaw. They would end up kicking him off the platform, so then he ends up teleporting. So therefore, when the Doctor thought he died, he actually teleported out of the area. So yeah, he basically got away, essentially. But unfortunately, Grace O'Brien basically wanted to get involved because she was all about helping people, right? She wanted to look after the Doctor because the Doctor basically was still recovering from the regeneration. So, she wanted to do everything she could to help because she was trying to deal with the sense of shock of like, oh my God, I've just regenerated. I don't seem to remember who I am. Grace was doing everything she could to basically help her out as much as she could and look after her in the home because she just came from a fall and figure out who she is, essentially. At the same time, when she did get involved in help basically dying from falling from the cane, which successfully destroys the coal, that led to her death, which basically Graham would lose his girlfriend slash wife. I guess we'll call it a wife in a way. It's really difficult because we don't know if they ever got married. So I can't say for certain if it was her wife. I would say girlfriend more than wife kind of makes the most sense to me. That yeah, she was more of a girlfriend to him rather than a wife, even though they would have got married if she had obviously a change. And then obviously following the funeral, the Doctor would end up getting some new clothes because she was still in Peter Capaldi's out. Therefore, it was time for the Doctor to finally find her new outfit, her sort of new clothes that would finally we love her outfit. Her outfit's so nice, isn't it? Seeing her in that sort of straps on and stuff. It was just really, really nice outfit that she picked out for her Doctor, and I'm really glad she went with that decision, the outfit she did. Obviously, the Doctor finally has her new outfit, but obviously she's now on the quest to find her TARDIS, teleport by herself to the area. She ended up basically teleporting all of them with her to deep space, where she thought she found the TARDIS, when really she was basically thrown into deep space near where the TARDIS was, which led to the second episode of the story, which is the Ghost Monument, where we would have this whole sort of series of games that the Doctor had to basically rescue Angstorm and Epsy, who were basically these two humanoid pilots who were trying to take part in this game, be able to find the TARDIS. Essentially, Curious Doctor learns from Leonard's data that it's the TARDIS stuck in a mid-phase due to the damage it suffered, joined the pilots on the. So essentially, it was basically a race to the finish line, and the Doctor basically had to make sure they got to the finish line so that the Doctor could reunite with his TARDIS. She could reunite with the TARDIS. It was definitely about, and also this story, we also met this sort of, who were called the cloth people called the Remedy, who kept giving the Doctor this prophecy about kept saying all these stuff about, oh, you're so shy, and you're the timeless child and everything, building up this whole timeless child plot line, which eventually carried through into majority of Jodie's run. Essentially, this whole timeless child thing, not many people were very fond of. The most exciting storyline we've seen in Doctor Who. Nevertheless, it led to the Doctor reuniting with her TARDIS. Oh man, it was so lovely for the Doctor to apologise to her friends for standing, but pauses when she hears the TARDIS emerging, and she uses her screwdriver to fully materialise it with her ship finally returns, and then she finds out that it changed inside and outside, and offers her friends to take a look inside the TARDIS, and she promised it, but obviously the long way round because that's how the Doctor works essentially. But yes, it was such a nice view to see the newly repurposed TARDIS finally being introduced to us, and the 13th Doctor's new TARDIS console, the fact that it gave her a biscuit before takeoff, that was just lovely that they did that. I actually kind of didn't mind the TARDIS design that they put in. It was a really, really good, it was really, really good story. And also this was the first episode to feature the new title scene, Jodie's run, which was basically pretty short and base. It was basically basic. It wasn't the most like wow factor intro. It was pretty basic for what it was, but either way, I didn't mind it. I mean, I didn't mind what I appreciated their attempt. It could have had a bit more wow factor to it, in my opinion. But the Ghost Monument, that was a nice story with the introduction of the new TARDIS. Rosa was a very powerful story. I love the fact that they did the whole Rosa storyline with the this whole Black Revolution sort of. Well, and it's also kind of funny, isn't it, to look at this story, realize that 2 years later we would have the whole Black Lives Matter events like this, essentially, where you would basically have this. Eventually, well, I mean, this episode essentially centers around basically Rosa having to give up basically was refusing to give up a seat on the bus, which led to her being arrested because of the law that was back then prevented people of color from being able to sit on the bus, essentially, because they were prioritizing the other side. And it's just, yeah, it's a very dark story, that whole real life story that happened. Nevertheless, the way that they told it in this story was very powerful, very, very powerful. And I'm glad they did it. And I also love the fact that they added a really lovely tune in Rise Up. Forgot the name of the singer, but yeah, they put that in there. It was a really touching way to show that sequence of her getting arrested for not giving up her spot. Basically, they talk about Rosa essentially fighting, basically continuing to fight. But yeah, it was such a powerful story, Rosa. Really enjoyed Rosa. Really good story. Definitely deserves a lot of praise. Definitely check it out if you haven't checked it out already. Final story I really enjoyed, Demons of Punjabi, which was essentially a storyline, essentially a member of Yaz's family, essentially about an event that happened in it, but it also centered around the Yaz's parents, well, a member of Yaz's family. So because of her heritage, basically under the Muslim heritage, it basically meant that we got to see her, we got to see basically a member of her family when she was young. Her grandmother Yab receiving a broken watch from her, when actually we find out Piri was definitely not her grandfather. It was somebody else, but essentially she was getting married to this guy she basically fell in love with in it, and then we find out that his older brother died during the military of World War II, so it had some ties to World War II, the story, which was very powerful. And then we had these two aliens mixed in with the two aliens that were involved. It was also really cool because we got to hear the sort of India version of the Doctor Who theme, which was really, really to hear that story. I love that. The fact that we got to go alongside the episode at the end, and I love that. It was such a nice arrangement that they did, and I feel like it was well received, that story, Demons of Punjabi. I just thought it was a really nice, touching way to sort of introduce us more to Yaz's family a bit more and understand about seeing her grandmother during her youth, and essentially understand. That was the final story that I enjoyed the series. Let me know in the comment section what you make of series 11, and also what your favorite episodes were, because half of the rest of the series just I wasn't particularly crazy for. I mean, the Witchfinders I was crazy for at one time, then I just got off it very quickly because it just wowed me as much as I thought it was going to, and it was very off-putting, the whole Witchfinder storyline. Yeah, there were some parts of it that was kind of good, but this whole idea of the way I thought it was going to, and I know it kind of put me off from wanting to see it further because of elements of the storyline. But either way, that was Jodie's final. That was her first series as the Doctor, and at least 4 stories that I feel were probably the better stories out of the rest of the series, because I think the rest. But yeah, let me know in the comment section what you make of Series 11, and we're going to be transferring over to Series 12 at the second series of Jodie Whittaker, and the series that aired that actually came out just a few weeks before the pandemic started. The timing of this series, and the pandemic are very close. I'm not even joking. We'll talk more about that in the next one. So see you then.